Welcome back. Now, the number one story of the week. Some big private sector companies are putting out policies and requirements for bringing employees back to the office. A lot of them are looking at bringing some employees back to the office after Memorial Day and bringing most people back after Labor Day. Ron Sanders is staff director at the Florida Center for Cybersecurity at the University of South Florida, former chief human capital officer at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Dan Blair is former deputy director at the Office of Personnel Management. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Does that scenario that the private sector is adopting that I mentioned a moment ago make sense, Ron, for the federal government too?
It does make sense, although, frankly, I think it's largely been overtaken by events. I think agencies have been planning for and making these adjustments for several weeks now, if not several months. I think they all knew this was coming. And I hope we get a chance to talk, Francis, about the inflection point that COVID-19 presented, because I think we're not going back to what we used to call the new normal. We're in a new normal now, and it is all about remote work.
I do want to talk about that, Dan. That's actually where I wanted to go next. What does this look like when we get to September, October, November? What does the next normal look like, in your view, given what we've learned over the past 14 months?
Well, I think what's paramount here is the health, safety, and welfare of the federal employees, and that is not inconsistent with the necessity to carry on the government's work. I think that what's going on in the private sector is helpful guidance, but remember the federal government is spread across, the North American continent, and so we're going to have to customize some individual workplaces and buildings. I agree with Ron that the new normal is not going to look the same as what we had prior to March of 2020. I think that across the board, we're going to see that the nature of work and how work is performed has been affected drastically by this. But I do believe that it's imperative that the government get back to work in the workplace, and I'm glad to see us moving forward along those lines.
Ron, I think the word that Dan used there that resonates with me the most is customize, because it strikes me there's going to be horizontal and vertical customization necessary across the government. And within an individual agency, a location in the district area is going to be different than a location in Texas or a location in California. And the Agriculture Department will come back differently than the Department of Veterans Affairs, and so on. What does that customization look like? How should it be approached from an individual agency level?
So, Francis, I think we've talked about one of what I believe are three criteria. Number one, health and safety of the federal worker. Number two, balanced with that is the mission of a particular office. And I'll stress here, it's got to be office by office by office. You mentioned a couple of agency examples. Think about VA and the multitude of different working environments in VA. So you can't have a VA-wide policy. It's literally got to be office by office. But let me add a third criterion, because I believe now that managers, voluntarily or otherwise, have adapted to this new normal. Before, there were lots of managers who were skeptical, what we used to call line of sight managers. You weren't working unless they could see you. And I think we've realized now, largely through COVID-19, that we can accomplish the mission without line of sight. It can be virtual, like we're virtual this morning. And I think then individual managers and supervisors are going to have to get used to that, because there are significant recruiting and retention issues associated with remote or not remote work. Those offices that adopt a remote recruiting and retention policy are probably going to be more competitive because employees are going to demand it. There are cybersecurity implications to all of that, of course. And there are also, interestingly enough, given my last posting, there are substantial locality pay implications to this as well. But there are lots of things we need to think through, but this is the new normal, as Dan has suggested.
Dan, we have about a minute left, and apologies to both of you for the short time that we have. What's the Office of Personnel Management, your former agency's role in providing frameworks to agencies to make decisions and to execute whatever those decisions are?
Well, I think it's OPM's role to provide a corporate guidance that's government-wide that allows for the things that we've just talked about: customization, recognition of different functions, and the different roles that agencies play. But I would also emphasize here, this is a test of the leadership. And I think that it's important that as we roll back into a more normal environment, that our leaders are the ones who who perform this. I think it's important that the political leadership come back. I think the Schedule C's and the political class should be among the leaders in that. I also think that the agency career leaders should be among the first that come back, because I think there are going to be employees who are skittish, who have genuine concerns. And I think communication across the board will be critical in helping make a comeback to the office successful.
Dan Blair and Ron Sanders, thanks very much for joining me. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Francis.
Thank you all very much.